One ordinary day with peanuts. Mr. John Philip Johnson shut his front door behind his arm and went down his front steps into the bright morning with a feeling that all was well with the world on this best of all days. And wasn't the sun warm and good? And didn't his shoes feel comfortable after the resoling? And he knew that he had undoubtedly chosen the very precious tie that belonged with the day and the sun and his comfortable feet. And after all, wasn't the world just a wonderful place? In spite of the fact that he was a small man and though the tie was perhaps a shade vivid, Mr. Johnson radiated a feeling of well-being as he went down the steps and onto the dirty sidewalks. And he smiled at people who passed him, and some of them even smiled back. He stopped at the newsstand on the corner and bought his paper, saying good morning with real conviction to the man who sold him the paper and the two or three or other people who were lucky enough to buy papers when Mr. Johnson skipped up. He remembered to fill his pockets with candy and peanuts, and then he set out to get himself uptown. He stopped in a flower shop and bought a carnation for his buttonhole, buttonhole, and stopped almost immediately after to give the carnation to a small child in a carriage, who looked at him dumbly and then smiled, and Mr. Johnson smiled, and the child's mother looked at Mr. Johnson for a minute and then smiled too. When he had gone several blocks uptown, Mr. Johnson cut across the avenue and went along a side street, chosen at random. He did not follow the same route every morning, but preferred to pursue his eventful way in wide detours. More like a puppy than a man intent upon business. It happened this morning then. That halfway down the block a moving van was parked and the furniture from an upstairs apartment stood half of the sidewalk, half on the steps, while an amused group of people loitered examining the scratches on the table and the worn spots on the chairs, and a harassed woman trying to watch a young child and the movers and the furniture all at the same time gave the clear impression of endeavoring to shelter her private life from the people staring at her. Belonging, Mr. Johnson stopped and for a moment joined the crowd. Then he came forward and touching his hat civilly, said, "Perhaps I can keep an eye on your little boy for you." The woman turned and glared at him distrustfully, and Mr. Johnson added hastily, "We'll sit right here on the steps." He beckoned to the little boy, who hesitated and then responded agreeably to Mr. Jones' genial smile. Mr. Johnson took out a handful of peanuts from his pocket and sat on the steps with a boy, who at first refused the peanuts on the grounds then that his mother did not allow him to accept food from strangers. Mr. Johnson said that probably his mother had not intended peanuts to be included, since elephants at the circus ate them, and the boy considered and then agreed. Solemnly, they sat on the steps cracking peanuts in a comradely fashion, and Mr. Johnson said, "So you're moving?" "Yep," said the boy. "Where are you going?" "Vermont. Nice place. Plenty of snow there. Maple sugar too. You like maple sugar?" "Sure. Plenty of maple sugar in Vermont." "You're going to live on the farm?" "Going to live with Grandpa." Grandpa like peanuts?" "Sure. Ought to take him some," said Mr. Johnson, reaching into his pocket. "Just you and Mommy going?" "Yep." "Tell you what," Mr. Johnson said, "you take some peanuts to eat on the train." The boy's mother, after glancing at the frequently, had seemingly decided that Mr. Johnson was trustworthy because she had devoted herself wholehearted to seeing that the movers did not what movers rarely do. But every housewife believes that will crack a leg from her good table, or set a kitchen chair down on a lamp. Most of the furniture was loaded by now, and she was deep in that nervous stage when she knew there was something she had forgotten to pack, hidden away in the back of closets somewhere, or left at a neighbor's and forgotten, or on the clothesline, and was trying to remember under stress what it was. This old lady, the chief mover said, completing her dismay. Uncertainly, she nodded. Want to go on the truck with the furniture, Sonny? The mover asked the boy and left. The boy left too, said to Mr. Johnson, I guess I'll have good time at Vermont. Fine time, said Mr. Johnson and stood up. Have one more peanut before you go, he said to the boy. The boy's mother said to Mr. Johnson, Thank you so much. It was a great help to me. Nothing at all, said Mr. Johnson gallantly. Where is Vermont are you going? Where in Vermont are you going? The mother looked at the little boy accusingly as though he had given away a secret of some importance and said unwillingly, Greenwich. Lovely town, said Mr. Johnson. He took out a card and wrote a name on the back. Very good friend of mine lives in Greenwich, he said. Call on him for anything you need. His wife makes the best donuts in town. He added soberly to the little boy. Swell, said the little boy. Goodbye, said Mr. Johnson. He went on, stepping happily with his new shod feet, feeling the warm sun on his back and on the top of his head. Halfway down the block, he met a stray dog and fed him a peanut. At the corner where other wide avenue faced him, Mr. Johnson decided to go on uptown again, moving with comparative laziness. He was passed on either side by people hurrying and frowning, and people brushed past him, going the other way. Clattering along to get somewhere quickly, Mr. Johnson stopped on every corner and waited patiently for the light to change, and he stepped out of the way of anyone who seemed to be in any particular hurry. But one young lady came too fast for him and crashed wildly into him, and when he stopped to pet a kitten, which had run out of the sidewalk from an apartment house and was now unable to get back through the rushing feet. Excuse me, said the young lady, trying to frantically to pick up Mr. Johnson and hurry up at the same time. Terribly sorry. The kitten, regardless now of danger, raced back to its home. Perfectly all right, said Mr. Johnson, adjusting himself carefully. You seem to be in a hurry. Of course I'm in a hurry, said the young lady. I'm late. She was extremely cross and the frown between her eyes seemed well on its way to becoming permanent. She had obviously awakened late, because she had not spent any extra time in making herself look pretty, and her dress was plain and unadorned with collar or brooch, and her lipstick was noticeably crooked. She tried to brush past Mr. Johnson, but risking her suspicious displeasure, he took her arm and said, Please wait. Look, she said ominously, I ran into you and your lawyer can see my lawyer and I will gladly pay all damage and all the inconvenience suffered therefrom, but please this minute let me go because I am late. Late for what? Said Mr. Johnson. He tried it, his winning smile on her, but did no more than keep her suspected from knocking him down again. Late for work, she said between her teeth. Late for my employment, I have a job, and if I am late, I lose exactly so much an hour, and I cannot really afford what your pleasant conversation is costing me, be it ever so pleasant. I'll pay for it, said Mr. Johnson. Now there was magic These were magic words, not necessarily because they were true or because she seriously expected Mr. Johnson to pay for anything, but because Mr. Johnson's flat statement, obviously innocent or irony, could not be coming from Mr. Johnson anything but the statement of a responsible and truthful and respectable man. What do you mean? She asked. I said that since I am obviously responsible for your being late, I shall certainly pay for it. Don't be silly, she said, and for the first time the frown disappeared. I wouldn't expect you to pay for anything. A few minutes ago, I was offering to pay you. Anyway, she added, almost smiling, it was my fault. What happens if you don't go to work? She started. I don't get paid. Precisely, said Mr. Johnson. What do you mean precisely? If I don't show up at the office exactly 20 minutes ago, I lose $1.20 an hour, or 2 cents a minute, or she thought. Almost a dime for the time I've spent talking to you. Mr. Johnson laughed and finally she left too. You're late already, he pointed out. Will you give me another 4 cents worth? I don't understand why. You'll see, Mr. Johnson promised. He led her over to the side of the walk next to the building and said, stand here, and went out into the rush of people going both ways, selecting and considering as one of who must make a choice involving perhaps whole years of lives. He estimated the people going by. Once he almost moved, and then at the last minute thought better of it and drew back. Finally, from half of a block away, he saw what he wanted and moved out into the center of the traffic to intercept a young man who was hurrying and dressed as though he was awakened late and frowning. Oof, said the young man, because Mr. Johnson had thought of no better way to intercept anyone than the young the one of the one the young woman had unwittingly used upon him. Where do you think you're going? The young man demanded from the sidewalk. I want to speak to you, said Mr. Johnson ominously. The young man got up nervously, dusting himself and eyeing Mr. Johnson. What for? He said. What? What I do? That's what bothers me most about people nowadays, Mr. Johnson complained broadly to the people passing. No matter whether they've done anything or not, they always figure someone's after them. About what you're going to do, he told the young man. Listen, said the young man, trying to brush past him. I'm late and I don't have any time to listen. Here's a dime. Now get going. Thank you, said Mr. Johnson, pocketing the dime. Look, he said, what happened if you stop running? I'm late, said the young man, still trying to get past Mr. Johnson, who was unexpectedly climbing. How much you make an hour? Mr. Johnson demanded. Communist, are you? Said the young man. Now will you please let me? No, said Mr. Johnson insistently. How much? $1.50, said the young man. And now will you like adventure? The young man started and staring found himself caught and held by Mr. Johnson's genial smile. He almost smiled back and then repressed it and made an effort to tear away. I got to hurry, he said. Mystery, you like surprises? Unusual and exciting events. You selling something? Sure, said Mr. Johnson. You want to take a chance? The young man hesitated, looking longingly up the avenue toward what might have been his destination, and then, when Mr. Johnson said, I'll pay for it, with his own peculiar, convincing emphasis, turned and said, well, okay, but I got to see it first, what I'm buying. Mr. Johnson, breathing hard, led the young man over to the side where the girl was standing. She had been watching with interest Miss Jones' capture of the young man, and now, smiling timidly, she looked at Mr. Johnson as though prepared to be surprised at nothing. Mr. Johnson reached into his pocket and took out his wallet. Here, he said, and handed a bill to the girl. This about equals your day's pay. But no, she said, surprised in spite of herself. I mean, I couldn't. Please do not interrupt, Mr. Johnson told her, and here, he said to the young man, this will take care of you. The young man accepted the bill dazedly, but said probably counterfeit to the young woman out of the side of his mouth. Now, Mr. Johnson went on, disregarding the young man. What is your name, miss? Kent, she said helplessly. Mildred Kent. Fine, said Mr. Johnson. And you, sir? Arthur Adams, said the young man stiffly. Splendid, said Mr. Johnson. Now, Miss Kent, and I would like you to meet Mr. Adams. Mr. Adams, Miss Kent. Miss Kent started, wet her lip nervously, made a gesture as though she might run and said, how do you do? Mr. Adams straightened his shoulders, scolded, scold, squalled, scolded, and Mr. Johnson made a gesture as though he might run it. Now this, said Mr. Johnson, taking several bills from his wallet, should be enough for the day. For both of you, I would suggest perhaps Coney Island, although I personally am not the fond of the place, or perhaps a nice lunch somewhere and dancing, or a matinee, or even a movie, although take care to choose a really good one. There are so many bad movies these days. You might, he said, struck with an inspiration, visit the Bronx Zoo or the planetarium anywhere. As a matter of fact, he concluded that you would like to go have a nice day. As he started to move away, Sir Adams, breaking from his dumbfounded stare, said, but see here, mister, you can't do this. Why, how do you know? I mean, we don't even know. I mean, how do you know we won't just take the money and not do what you said? You've taken the money, Mr. Johnson, and you don't have to follow any of my suggestions. You may know something you prefer to do, perhaps a museum or something. But I suppose I just run away with it and leave her here. I know you won't, say Mr. Johnson gently, because you remembered to ask me that. Goodbye, he added, and went on. As he stepped up the street, conscious of the sun on his head and his good shoes, he heard from somewhere behind him the young man saying, look, you know you don't have to do if you don't want to, and the girl saying, but unless you don't want to. Mr. Johnson smiled to himself and then thought that he had better hurry along. When he wanted to, he could move very quickly, and before the young woman had gotten around to saying, well, I will if you will, Mr. Johnson was several blocks away and had already stopped twice, once to help a lady lift several large packages into a taxi, and once to hand a peanut to a seagull. By this time he was in area of large stores and many more people, and he was buffeted buffeted constantly from either side by people hurrying and cross and late and sullen. Once he offered a peanut to a man who asked him for a dime, and once he offered a peanut to a bus driver who had stopped his bus at an intersection and had opened the window next to his seat and put out his head as though longing for fresh air and the comparative quiet of the traffic. The man wanting a dime took the peanut because Mr. Johnson had wrapped a dollar bill around it, but the bus driver took the peanut and asked ironically, you want a transfer, Jack? On a busy corner, Mr. Johnson encountered two young people. For 1 minute he thought they might be Mildred Kent and Arthur Adams, who were eagerly scanning a newspaper, their backs pressed against the store front to avoid the people passing, their heads bent together. Mr. Johnson, whose curiosity was insatiable, Inzetable leaned onto the storefront next to them and peeked over the man's shoulder. They were scanning the apartment vacant columns. Mr. Johnson remembered the street where the woman and her little boy were going to Vermont, and he tapped the man on the shoulder and said amiably, "Try down on West 17th, about the middle of the block. People moved out this morning." "Say, what do you?" said the man, and then seeing Mr. Johnson clearly. "Well, thanks. Where did you say?" West 17th, said Mr. Johnson, "about the middle of the block." He smiled again and said, "Good luck." "Thanks," said the man. "Thanks," said the girl as they moved off. "Goodbye," said Mr. Johnson. He lunched alone in a pleasant restaurant where the food was rich and only Mr. Johnson's excellent digestion could encompass two of their whipped cream and chocolatined rum cake pastries for dessert. He had 3 cups of coffee, tipped the waiter largely, and went out into the street again into the wonderful sunlight, his shoes still comfortable and fresh on his feet. Outside, he found a beggar staring into the windows of the restaurant he had left and carefully looking through the money in his pocket. Mr. Johnson approached the beggar and pressed some coins and a couple of bills into his hand. "It's the price of the veal cutlet lunch plus tip," said Mr. Johnson. "Goodbye." After his lunch, he walked into the nearest park and fed peanuts to the pigeons. It was late afternoon by the time he was ready to start back downtown, and he had referred to checkers game and watched a small boy and a girl whose mother had fallen asleep and awakened with surprise and fear that turned to amusement when she saw Mr. Johnson. He had given away almost all of his candy and had fed all the rest of his peanut to the pigeons, and it was time to go home. Although the late afternoon sun was pleasant and his shoes were still entirely comfortable, he decided to take a taxi downtown. He had difficult time catching a taxi because he gave up the first 3 or 4 empty ones to people who seemed to need them more. Finally, however, he stood alone in the corner and almost like netting a frisky fish, he hailed desperately until he succeeded in catching a cab that had been proceeding with haste uptown and seemed to draw in towards Mr. Johnson against its own will. "Mr. the cab driver said, and Mr. Johnson climbed in. "I figured you was an old man, like I wasn't going to pick you up at all." "Kind of you," said Mr. Johnson ambiguously. "If I'd let you go, it would cost me $10," said the driver. "Really?" said Mr. Johnson. "Yeah," said the driver. "Guy just got off the cab. He turned around and gave me $10. Said, 'Take this and bet in a hurry of a horse named Vulcan right away.'" "Vulcan," said Mr. Johnson, horrified. "A fire sign on Wednesday." "What?" said the driver. "Anyway, I said to myself, if I got no fare between here and there, I'd bet the 10, but if anyone looked like they needed a cab, I'd take it as an omen and I'd take the 10 home to the wife." "You were very right," said Mr. Johnson heartedly. "This is Wednesday. You would have lost your money. Monday, yes, or even Saturday. But never, never, never bet a fire sign on a Wednesday. Sunday would have been good now." "Vulcan don't run on Sunday," said the driver. You wait. "You wait till another day," said Mr. Johnson. "Down this street, please, driver. I'll get off on the next corner." "He told me Vulcan, though," said the driver. "I'll tell you," said Mr. Johnson, hesitating with the door of the cab half open. "You take that $10 and I'll give you another $10 to go with it. And you go right ahead and bet the money on any Thursday or any horse that has a name indicating, let me see." Thursday, well, grain or any growing food. Grain, said the driver. You mean a horse name like Wheats or something? Certainly, said Mr. Johnson. Or, as a matter of fact, to make it even easier, any horse whose name includes the letter C or L. Perfectly simple. Tall corn, said the driver, a light in his eye. You mean a horse name like Tall Corn? Absolutely, said Mr. Johnson. Here's your money. Tall Corn, said the driver. Thank you, mister. Goodbye, said Mr. Johnson. He was on his own corner and went straight up to his apartment. He let himself in and called hello, and Mrs. Johnson answered from the kitchen. Hello, dear, aren't you early? Took a taxi home, Mr. Johnson said. I remembered the cheesecake too. What's for dinner? Mrs. Johnson came out of the kitchen and kissed him. She was a comfortable woman and smiling as Mr. Johnson smiled. How are they? She asked. Not very, said Mr. Johnson, hanging his coat in the closet. How about you? So, she said. She stood in the kitchen doorway while he settled into easy chair and took off his good shoes and took out the paper he had bought that morning. Here and there, she said. I didn't do so badly, Mr. Johnson said. Couple of young people. Fine, she said. I had a little nap this afternoon, took it easy most of the day. Went into a department store this morning and accused the woman next to me of shoplifting, and had the store detective pick her up. Sent 3 dogs to the pounds, you know, the usual thing. Oh, and listen, she added, remembering. What? Asked Mr. Johnson. Well, she said, I got onto a bus and asked the driver for a transfer, and when he helped someone else first, I said that he was imperi- impertinent and quarreled with him. And then I said, why wasn't he in the army? And I said it loud enough for everyone to hear, and I took his number and I turned in a complaint. Probably got him fired. Fine, said Mr. Johnson, but you do look tired. Want to change over tomorrow? I would like to, she said. I could do with a change. Right, said Mr. Johnson. What's for dinner? Veal cutler. Had it for lunch, said Mr. Johnson.